Hiya folks, it's me Lenn256i, and I'm back once again with a new video. So, you may know me for the extremely niche YouTube channel Lenn256i. Well, now I'm doing a new retrospective in a series of Sonic games from the early 2000s, and it's on 3 games I really cherish near and dear to me. Well, here goes. I hope I get this video done in time before my sanity becomes as existent as my social life. Seriously, why did I take the time to write this crap? It's about goddamn time I got a job. Enter your childhood, a magical place where... well, okay. Sonic the Hedgehog has had it hard these last... Nah, that's been overdone too. Damn it, do I love Sonic's Dreamcast era.
You can come to my pool.
Hiya folks, and welcome back to another video by yours truly. And this time we're actually not talking about Spyro. Oh jeez, who'd have thunk it? Actually, that joke's been overdone as well. Anyway, whereas most of you know that Spyro the Dragon is my all-time favourite video game series, and I'll cherish it to the very last second that I'll breathe, some of you may have noticed, or are about to learn, there was actually another series I got into at a slightly earlier age than the time I found Spyro. That's right! Sonic. And as it so happens to turn out, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was actually the very first video game I could ever get my grubby mitts on at the age of 4 years old. Well, if my mind serves me correctly anyway. Of course I just gazed into the screen like a moth to a flame. Mainly because I was like, yeah, what the fuck do I do? There's a blue looking dog thing in a hurry needing to go somewhere. Where do I go? And then I fumbled around in Emerald Hill Zone for the next, I don't know, half hours. My cousin looked down upon me in disgust, mainly because I didn't know how to play a video game. But one thing was for certain, it was a nice introduction to gaming, and it really appealed to me that I could control this wee aquamarine coloured cartoon hedgehog to break these robotic animals and run freely to the end of the stage with a nice feeling of momentum being picked up as you went along. And despite having as much fun as I did, it never really was much of a jumping on point into the series, since I barely knew what a video game was at the time and I hadn't had anything close to it for myself at home. Plus the Mega Drive that me and my one cousin used to play belonged to my uncle back when he used to play Sonic in the 90s, when the so-called golden age of the series was active. And after a decade and a half, my grandmother had actually gave it to me a few years ago since she knew I liked Sonic and Sega and stuff. Where that old copy of Sonic 2 is though, nobody knows. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually sold it. Or hell, it's even broken. Admittedly, I once had an annoyingly clingy obsession to Sonic in my primary school years, and it's ridiculously embarrassing for me personally to even think of those times. Hell, I'm even guilty of making my own Sonic fan character long ago that practically any young Sonic fan will have made. Which I later reworked into Phoenix, by the way, a much better use of the character, and saying that, I did make Sarah through Sonic Forces, didn't I? When I hit Primary 1, I'm pretty sure I was given Sonic Adventure for the Nintendo GameCube. Let's drop all this funny fuckery and finally finish what we started, god Josh dong it. As we start this Dreamcast era Sonic reviews. Meaning I'll be looking at Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes in that order. So, some of you might be asking, why this era over the classic era, or the modern era more specifically? Well, personally I believe this to be my personal favourite time for not just 3D Sonic, but Sonic the Hedgehog as a brand entirely. It was a time period packed with a row of 3 great games, a decently made anime with an annoying human side character, Mega Collection Plus and Gems Collection. Enough said in that department. And yeah, what else can I say? It was a simpler time back then, a calm before the storm if you will. So long ago in the 90s, many different franchises and characters were being put up against the wall to be I mean determined to see what can be translated over to the language of 3-sided dimensional video games for the kiddies with their parents want to watch the telly and you get the idea. Round about this time, you got your previous 2D games, mainly from Nintendo, moving to 3D like Super Mario with Super Mario 64, Star Fox with Star Fox 64, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Earthworm Jim with Earthworm Jim.
Oh yeah, he's coming back.
Then you have your brand new IPs like Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, and of course the thing I can't shut up about, FIFA. And even though we had all these great games coming into 3D, there was one major question on everyone's mind who had played Sega before. Where the dang flop it was Sonic? Unfortunately, there'd been no sign of a notable 3D Sonic game that fully utilised the next generation of consoles. That is, unless we count Sonic R. Okay, I know this game isn't anything special at all, but come on, it's not that. It's something. Okay, it is bland and isn't what I think is the definitive Sonic experience in 3D, but it's not horrifically offensive, right? Nah, I'm kidding. This is the best the series has to offer, and it's way better than the Dreamcast and modern era combined, even the classic era. You guys, if you think Sonic 3 Knuckles is better than this game, get out. I mean, it didn't make any sense at the time. Sonic 3 and Knuckles had Sonic on top of the world at one point in time, and making the jump to 3D would have just made all that much more sense. However, we did get an answer from the actual developers at Sonic Team to see Sonic in 3D, and that was a funny little hub world simulator featuring Sonic and at one point Tails, I think. I don't know, I don't own it, okay? This game was called Sonic Goes on Trial for Tax Evasion, but he couldn't help himself much because he's greatly underpaid at his job as a car washer and can't afford a lawyer. Sonic World Mode. In Sonic Jam. Honestly, I've never played Sonic Jam or the Sonic World mode since I'm not one of the 0.1% of people who actually own or even seen what a Saturn is. But it still looks like a nice distraction for those who wanted a 3D Sonic outing back then. That is if they were definitely disappointed with Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R. So, come the year of 1998. Finally, Sega decided to tackle the next generation with a serious vengeance. Disappointment after disappointment. They were ready to release their next console to define the name Sega. But this would become the Sega Dreamcast. A very underrated console, might I add. One that I didn't get to own, mind you, but my grandparents did, so I was fine for that. The same grandparents that actually introduced me to Spyro. Even my grandparents had a shot at Sonic a few times and really happened to enjoy it. I guess that's how timeless and how much appeal this character has to offer if you think about it.
My bad.
No, it is true I wouldn't get to play the Dreamcast until a little while after I got the remake on the GameCube. And from what I can remember, I liked it. It was more or less the same, and apparently the GameCube version is more glitchy and buggy or something like that. But I honestly can't tell the two versions apart. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, back to the history. So to kickstart the Sega Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure was finally released in Japan in 1998, and then later on in 1999 for everywhere else. The game did pretty good at first by getting some praiseworthy scores, and was considered at the very least respectable as a game. Boy, remember those times? And as the years passed, it became a bit of a mindset followed by many that Adventure 1 and Adventure 2 really weren't that great. And other games like Colors and Generations were the better light for Sonic to be shown in 3D. Oh yeah, I can totally see why for Colors. Alright, I'll try not to be as salty, but I honestly do believe that Sonic Adventure is kinda underappreciated and quite overhated in a lot of ways by today's crowd. And why is that? Well, allow me to explain in my review of Sonic Adventure, played on the Nintendo GameCube and Steam. I really like the part in Sonic Adventure's intro where, like, the guy goes, "Open your heart!" Nah, seriously though, this intro, like this opening cutscene was the most hype shit as a kid. Okay, so let's begin with the story, shall we? Okay, so whereas a story in a Sonic game wasn't really that integral to the main game itself in past adventures, this game however is the polar exact opposite. If it's one thing you should know about when going into Sonic Adventure, it's that it follows one big massive story that's spread across 6 different characters and their sides are told within their campaigns respectively. At the time of production of Sonic Adventure, apparently the game's director Takashi Iizuka had suggested that it would follow a more complex and dynamic story that build upon the story of Sonic's universe. And after completing all of them will grant you the final story with the final scene taking place, joining all the characters' sides into one. And as a kid I thought all this was awesome and I loved the structure of storytelling and admittedly I still do like it today. The beginning of the story chronologically begins far back in the past before any events in the Sonic universe had taken place. Like before Sonic 1 I presume. An ancient echidna tribe led by a chief called Pakayama, despite his name not being clarified in the story for some weird odd reason, and his daughter Tikal are all living in peace. Behind the civilization, Tikal found a temple one day where several small creatures were hanging around. And these creatures are called the Chow, who are being protected by a literal body of water called Chaos. And as it turns out, Tikal was the only echidna who actually knew about this ancient place and was quite caring to the Chow and Chaos alike, whilst no one else really knew about this area. Although one fateful night, Pakayama and his tribe found out about the Chows and Chaos and apparently saw it as a threat to his tribe somehow. So without question and completely ignoring his daughter's pleas to stop, he and his army barbarically attack her and the small innocent beings until Chaos appears before Pakayama and his tribe and smiteth him from the faceth, offeth, the eartheth. No, seriously, he kinda died. And in a desperate attempt, she runs to the Master Emerald and seals both herself and Chaos in it to trap him from causing any potential harm to her, her people, or even the world, making it a worthy sacrifice. I really find this aspect to the story to be really overlooked. Like, I really find Tikal to be a great character and a somewhat underappreciated one at that. She comes across as a really nice girl who just wanted to care for this new community of life she found and prevented any danger from further occurring to both her fellow brethren and sister in the Echidna tribe, and to the Chow and Chaos attacking as some kind of peacemaker in this war. So you might be wondering, what does this all have to do with Sonic the Hedgehog? Let's start with Sonic's story first, which is also the first and, well, the only one you can play first. Fun fact, apparently it was actually Tails you could play as before unlocking Sonic, as this line of text that you could find in the game's files actually reads, "Now you can play as Sonic." So were you going to play as Tails first? Was Tikal meant to be playable? So starting off, Sonic is running in the 90s high above the city of Station Square, one of the 3 main hub worlds within this game. He's just enjoying himself by looking at the city skyline and it's a great introduction. He's just kicking back and...
Oh yeah! This is happening! Huh?
Yeah. He can talk now. Well, unless you count Jaleel White previously. Well, unless you count the Archie comics. Well, unless you count the UK rendition of the comics. And, well, if you count Sonic CDs, I'm out of here. Okay. This is still his first official voice in a video game. I'll develop my opinions later on in the voice acting since we're talking about the story, so hold your horses and put him in the back. So anyway, Sonic sees the cars down below and wonders what's going on. So like a bowling ball to a pin, he speeds right on after them to see what the commotion is about. And as it turns out, Chaos is there wreaking havoc by standing in the City Hall entrance roof, and well, Captain Dum Dum here and his squad of idiots think shooting loaded firearms at a literal water monster was a good idea. Like, I mean, unless they're aiming for the head. Just then our big boy Blue over here comes in to handle the situation, but ultimately just scares him away or immobilizes him for a bit. And then we see a peculiar figure standing on a building, just laughing away at the fact that the monster was able to escape Sonic. So yeah, the game starts off with a boss fight and doesn't really show you how to play as Sonic for first time newcomers. But if I remember correctly, I honestly had no issue playing this boss when I was a kid. Yeah, it just snapped with me like that. It's a pretty okay boss. Just bop him in the head 3 times and he's down for the count. So Sonic sleeps off at a nearby hotel resort next to a beach and is woken up by the... in the sky from his good old buddy Miles Tails Prower the Fox. And he's either had too much to drink or... well, actually no, that'll be what it is. We've had guns and swearing in this series, who's to say that alcohol isn't a thing either? And after speeding across the beach, he later finds out that Tails is just sitting on the beach completely fine. Well, glad to know he isn't hurt at all. And then he informs Sonic of his most recent creation called the Tornado. Tails then tells Sonic that it's being run on one of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Basically they're the MacGuffins of the story. They have the ability to turn thoughts into power and so on and so forth. And by gaining all 7 of them, can practically turn you into a Super Saiyan. Tails then tells Sonic that he should come with him to his house in the Mystic Ruins to see what his new plane's like, since that one that he just crashed was a prototype and he's been testing it out for a while now. And on the way there they run into Dr. Ivo Robotnik, now jokingly dubbed by Sonic as Eggman.
I am Dr. Robotnik, the greatest scientific genius in the world. Whatever you say, Eggman. Enough!
Yes, a region-based issue between the East and the West, in deciding what they should name the main villain. It's now a simple retcon joke. That's genius. The good doctor then springs his newest contraption on them and yet another boss occurs. So whoop-de-scoop-de whoop, Dr. Eggman is defeated. Yeah, he's defeated alright. And just as they believe he's down for the count, he does a... nicks the emerald right out of Tails' hands as he's running towards them. Eggman boasts about his watery friend Chaos and threatens their lives and says he'll ruin their career. And as it turns out from being shown earlier in the game, Eggman has managed to tame the creature and is now working together with it to slowly take over
the entire tri-state area!
Honestly, this is a really nice plot point here. Dr. Eggman demonstrates he's not playing around this time and he's not using silly clunker-junker machines. And with Chaos absorbing the power of the Chaos Emeralds and gaining more as he goes along, it feels like you're really at odds here, and it might not be as easy as bopping a few machines this time around. It's a really neat sense of tension within the story if you ask me. And for a while the story goes on in autopilot mode for a bit where you go around some levels and just speed through some environments in traditional classic Sonic fashion. Basically still reminding you that you're playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game and all. The only update on the plot we're given since the encounter with Eggman was when Sonic and Tails exit the casino and go, "Oh shit," allowing Eggman to take their emeralds and yeet on out of there. Sometime after that little escapade we meet up with another classic character from the past titles, Knuckles the Enchilada, who works at Aldi's and committed tax fraud as well the other day. So Knuckles does a "oh no" and mysteriously attacks Sonic without question, ordering him to hand over the emeralds right away. Well, that's pretty weird. I thought they were all okay after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Well, like I said earlier, Sonic Adventure has split multiple storylines. all being told by that specific character and coming together as one by the end. So after their boss fight that really isn't worth mentioning, to be honest, Dr. Eggman reappears and snatches those emeralds right up, basically taking the victory royale and just rubbing it in their faces. Poof! Got him! Also, the animation for when he's holding 2 emeralds looks hilarious, since he looks like he's a DJ hosting some kind of house party. This then allows Chaos to go Sicko Saiyan mode 69.5, leading to another boss fight with the walking melted ice lolly. After Eggman takes off in his low poly rendition of his new creation, the egg carrier, Sonic and Knuckles get it? make amends and call a truce after a rather petty reason to fight. Then Sonic and Tails finally head over to Tails' house to finally see what the Tornado 2 looks like. The Mario Brothers take flight and try to take on the egg carrier before Eggman can get away.
Let's go!
Unfortunately though, they fail and they get yeeted out of the sky by Eggman's big egg laser again. Oof! Oh yeah, fun fact again by the way, there's a scrapped dragon boss fight for this and I would have loved it if they kept it in the game. Oh god, I wish this was finished. Then Sonic falls from the sky and back into Station Square, where he acts just a little bit rude to some random little girl who stares at him.
Hello? You're not who I'm looking for.
Like, you gonna say something, little girl? No? Okay, fine, be like that. I didn't feel like talking anyway. So, not much later on, Sonic's name is being called out by a girl's voice. And that voice just so happens to be coming from Amy. Rosie the Rascal. For classic fans, that's Amy, Rosie the Rascal, but not anymore because we decided not to call her that anymore, Rose from Sonic CD. And she's looking for Sonic's help to look after a little bird. Without much words being spoken, Amy puts her foot down and just decides to tag along anyways after Sonic tries to run away. It's still nice to know that Sonic doesn't care much for her from Sonic CD because honestly, I think that works best between them both. I mean, Sonic's never really been one for showing much affection to her. Although, he's never really a dick about it. He's just too busy and he doesn't have time to stop. So while Sonic's trying to run a triathlon and Amy's falling close behind, they run into a theme park since it said something about cute couples getting in free. But Sonic's like, what the fuck, cuties and shit, yo! But for some reason, Amy decides to go in anyway, despite being in potential danger from that Dr. Cortex-headed looking ass robot over there after her wanting to kidnap her. What? I mean, granted Sonic didn't know, but couldn't he have just taken out the robot as she was running away? I mean, that would have solved a lot of things. So after a fun trip into the park, Sonic seems to have lost track of Amy and throws around some 90s cliche one-liners about hauling ass and... Wait a minute, quality ass? Sonic then heads into the main parts of the city and Speed Highway, and he still can't seem to find her anywhere. Still, at least we get to see what Sonic was doing in the earlier moments of the game though. I mean, I think Speed Highway would have made for a nice first level if you ask me, but whatever. Now it was the player's turn to run on buildings and leap between platforms that are the rooftops of a neon city surely inspired by that of Japan. Oh sorry, I was just enjoying this game. Oh sorry, yeah, bugs, glitches, oh bad, shit. Sonic then finds himself in the early hours of the morning in the same place he met with Amy beforehand. And there he sees that the Cortex robot, his name is Zero by the way, is just running away with Amy, taking her back to the egg carrier. So Sonic is like, whoa, that's no good, and gives chase in the mountains of the Mystic Ruins. There he also meets Tails and they be back for round 2.
Let's get this bread!
Once on board the ship and having a clownless crash sequence on there too, they head on over to the egg carrier's sky deck of cards, Ace of Spaces to be exact. They then find Amy being confronted by Eggman, who has now gained the upper hand and another Chaos Emerald from the bird's locket of all places. So Eggman calls upon one of his most favourite badniks to take on Sonic, which then Amy stops Sonic from destroying because Amy sees something within this robot that apparently the others don't have. Something of a soul in that aspect, I guess. Tails then exclaims that the ship is losing altitude.
Hey, the ship is losing altitude.
Sonic then asks Tails to take Amy and bail before the ship goes down entirely with them on it. And I won't lie, This gives off an ominous tone that really hammers in the build-up of the fight with Chaos and Eggman coming up next. Hell, even the lack of music when Sonic talks about fixing the ship and that mini cutscene having the ship change still gives me a bit of a chill running down my spine to this day.
If I'm to continue, I need to change this ship back to its original shape. There must be a switch somewhere on the bridge. I've got to find it now.
Emergency alert has been cancelled. Resuming monorail operation.
Cut it out! You give me the creeps!
Sonic finds Eggman harassing a purple cat named Big, and we will get to him, let me tell you, alright? Listen. Those horses need to be held. And Sonic promises the cat that he'll get his frog back for him, as well as take down Chaos 6 before the ship crashes. Knuckles runs in just as Sonic beats Chaos 6 for his story's purposes, then Eggman just decides to end it all. Like, yeah, wow, just jumping at least 20,000 feet in the sky to the ground. And then Sonic face plants on his, well, his fucking face! And he then sees that he's next to a big temple with a shimmering light inside it. After exploring within this temple, he then runs into ancient manuscripts. And these manuscripts actually tell Chaos's fate in becoming a massive water monster and destroying everything. Wait, he kinda looks like a dildo. After learning this, Sonic then races back outside and wonders to himself what he just saw.
What's this place? Where am I? This is really weird.
And then spots Ego the Prego, Scadadataling, Skibbity Rapidup. So after running through the 90s in Eggman's base, Sonic and Eggman then face off against each other on two very specific platforms in the air. And it's a great end to Sonic's side of the story. I can just take a moment to adore Sonic's character here. Okay, nice. I abso-fucking-lutely adore Sonic's character in this game. It shows him to be the heroic and laid-back carefree hero he's always shown to be. And it's a character trait that works greatly in his favour. Nowadays, Sonic is written to be a kind of a careless douchebag that everyone just tends to generalise him to be. Whereas here he seems less self-centred, and even when he is, he doesn't come across as if he's doing it to be an arse or something like that. All I'm saying is, don't write Sonic to be an, oh no, I couldn't save my buddy, and make him more of a, if he's your friend, then I'll help too. Overall, that was Sonic's portion of the game, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, it's like the classic games, and we get to see him be a little bit more dynamic this time around. I mean, sure, Sonic 3 and Knuckles conveyed a pretty good story by just having no voice acting and all of it be, well, shown visually, almost as if it were a book or a comic strip. But I personally really like Sonic Adventure's story with voice acting. I think it adds to his character just that little bit more. Overall, I really enjoyed Sonic's story in this game, and I'd say it's probably my favourite part of the entire game for sure. If not, then definitely the final boss, but that's for later. Tails' story is very similar to that of Sonic's, so I won't really cover most of his, but what I will comment on is the changes in dialogue. Thankfully, they've changed up a few aspects from Tails' perspective to save it from getting stale and becoming, well, tedious and repetitive to rewatch. For example, Dr. Eggman says things in a much more sinister tone as opposed to his slightly lighter deliverance in Sonic's story.
Well, well, well. If it isn't Sonic and Tails.
It's Eggman!
Pilot! I am Dr. Robotnik, the most cunning scientific genius in the world! Yeah, right, Dr. Eggman. Enough! I've been working on enough.
Other than that though, I really like this change. It shows that Tails is probably seeing this in a much different light than what Sonic is. Whereas Sonic is much more confident, Tails is still developing as a character, and it would make sense for him to be a little bit afraid. Round about when they crash land from the egg carrier, which feels like such a great crushing defeat, might I add. Actually, it sounds kinda weird to say that. There's actually some character development at this part where Sonic and Tails were separated. Tails at one point is left alone where we actually see a dream of his where he met Sonic in the Mystic Ruins for the first time. Afterwards, when he wakes up, he contemplates if he really should rely on his idol so much, and probably begin to do some or maybe even everything himself from this point onward. And you really sense this progression of Tails developing as himself rather than being another version of Sonic, which fittingly is what he was in Sonic 2 if you think about it, well, gameplay wise anyway. I'll pick up on this character development arc a little later near the end of his story, but it's really nice that they brought it to light here earlier so it's in the back of our mind. So after chasing a frog that nicked a Chaos Emerald, Tails goes sandboarding down a hill. Yeah, by the way, that's an actual sport. Wow. And after he catches the frog, he's taken away by Tikal's orb again to speak with him. Oh yeah, another thing. Every character is given a fragment of a scene so the player can learn about Tikal's story with the Chill and the Chaos Emeralds. It may seem a little confusing in terms of keeping up with the story, but it's not as muddled as you might think. In fact, these scenes are very brief and they only last a couple of seconds anyway. Then floopity whoopity scoopity loopity, Big the cat comes in and Tails drops the frog in shock, I would assume. I mean, he nearly fell on him. And then Tails goes out and flies in his new tornado. And finds Sonic at the very moment he chases the egg carrier despite it being night in his story, but it's day or morning or something like that in Sonic's. Like, what? Whatever. And then the story goes on a little bit of an autopilot because we already covered what happens in the egg carrier. So after that, a little while after when Tails flies Amy down from the egg carrier, Tails spots Dr. Eggman launching a goddamn nuke in the city. Yeah, like full on bomb. Like, this is a new low even for Eggman. I'm gonna make an expose video. Dr. Eggman exposed, ruined career. But oh no! The nuke turned out to be as useful as a grass chair. What could this mean? Well, Dr. Eggman races to it in order to activate it again. So Tails realizes that it's all up to him and he races on over to chase Eggman to disarm the nuke, before Eggman can get to it first and reactivate it again. As to why he'd run towards a live bomb at any moment, or at least one that's about to blow up, I don't know. So once Tails has stopped the nuke, it's finally time for the showdown between him and Eggman.
You fool. Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I can do this.
Tails now has to face his fears. From being a zero little kid who has wee twinkles of stars in his eyes and striving to become the best he can be, to becoming his very own idol by overcoming his fears and standing up for himself for the first time in his life. I really love this development for him. It made me love his character development so much as a kid, and even today I still really like it. It's one of the best developments for a character I have ever seen in media. So, with Dr. Eggman now defeated, this leaves Tails being praised for his bravery by the people of Station Square. Seeing Tails' face light up in reaction to what he's achieved is always so wholesome and just heartwarming to me. Like, I keep reiterating like a bloody parrot, this is one of Tails' best moments in the entire franchise. And this game has the best character to Tails we've ever seen in the series. Right up there with his Sonic Adventure 2 and Siam counterparts. Heck, I'd like to think classic Tails is his infant years and this is his preteen years. All in all, Tails' campaign was great, and story-wise I think it might be that little bit better than Sonic's. And is in my opinion my favourite story in this game for sure. So knock knock, it's Knuckles. And his story also takes place right after Sonic 3 and, well, Knuckles. And he's still a little sore about the previous games' escapade and being tricked by Eggman, but mainly stays being the guardian of the Master Emeralds. Just when he contemplates to himself why he's there and where the rest of his kind are, since he's the only echidna left, the very first character to encounter chaos was actually Knuckles himself, as he finds the strength to finally break free with Tikal. This has now made the Master Emerald split into multiple parts across the lands. And just after chaos melts away to Station Square, Knuckles' eyes are directed to the fact that the island is slowly falling from the sky and into the ocean like it did in Sonic 3. Isn't it clever how consistency in writing can totally help your narrative be stronger? Hey Sonic team? So when morning arises, Knuckles heads on over to Station Square to begin looking for the Master Emerald pieces.
I ain't gonna find him.
What? It's a video game. I think it's allowed to have a set of worlds to condense everything to seem less overwhelming by going around a massive Hyrule field looking ass and having a nice little sandpit for every character to make use of. Much later when Nocles enters a casino, he gets swept away by Tikal. Here he discovers Tikal and her father having their first fight about Pakayama's bloodthirsty barbaric actions, and what it all means for himself and his tribe at the end of the day. Here we see that he's slowly being overcome by pure greed and a strong want for power. Almost like an Eggman in a sort of way. Either way. So after scouting about Station Square for some emerald pieces, Knuckles finds Dr. Eggman walking through the local hotel. I guess he's not wanted by the law at all, and even then he does look quite different in appearance since the last game, so self-awareness? I don't know. You're asking the wrong boy, pal. He's then confronted by Knuckles in one of the higher up dining rooms in the building. Funny place for a boss fight, but we fight Chaos 2 in it either way. So after Knuckles drinks Chaos to his heart's content like a right old pirate, Dr. Eggman being defeated then tells Knuckles that he just phased Chaos a little and he'll be back and better the next time. Knuckles is then like,
Are you insane?
and Eggman then tricks Knuckles into believing it's actually Sonic who Knuckles should be going after for collecting parts of the Master Emerald. Okay, I can kinda let this slide for Adventure 1 somewhat since Knuckles here clearly is desperate to find as many emerald pieces as he can, since not even he knows what can happen without the emerald's balance being in place straight away. Maybe the world can be rid of Krispy Kreme. Maybe live-action remake movies will become the norm with Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon being candidates. I seriously hope I'm wrong about that, by the way. Maybe the Jak and Daxter series will be re-released constantly and never see a new Oh. Well, you get the idea. Knuckles loves his Minecraft. Sometime later, after hunting for more emeralds, he meets up with Sonic and Tails, which leads into the same fight we see in Sonic and Tails' stories, same score for Chaos 4. So after kicking Chaos's water, and shortly after being teleported by Tikal again, he overhears her and Chaos talk about her father again. And it turns out at this point, she is worried about what her father will do since he's planning on visiting the Master Emerald Shrine. Shortly after that, Knuckles returns back in front of his time's rendition of the Master Emerald Shrine, and without much contemplation about what he just experienced, he gets back on the objective like a true soldier, and he tries mending the emerald back together again. He then learns that the 3 final pieces are missing and lying on board the egg carrier, and whoopity doopity slew, wouldn't you believe it, one of Eggman's supposed badniks is rolling around the nearby them, yeah? And then Knuckles is like, I should go follow him, what the putty? And Knuckles then follows the roller back to the egg carrier, also conveniently enough. And then he goes hunting on board for the final 3 green Crash Bandicoot crystals. Later on he meets up with Sonic and Eggman on the deck of the ship exactly as he defeats Chaos 6 supposedly. Except not really. Chaos 6 comes right back for Knuckles to fight, and this version is easily my favourite version of the boss itself. And so, with the Master Emerald restored, Knuckles makes a run, or rather a glide for it, and returns to Angel Island alongside the 6 Chaos Emeralds and that Chaos dropped after being defeated. Surely nothing could go wrong this time, right? Overall, I can say that I really like the character of Knuckles in this game, and how he's shown off to be a more softer and more spiritual side to him in a sense. He's a very soft-spoken and calm individual when you look deep into his character within this story, with his tough guy and stupid meathead sides only being minor aspects of his personality at points. It's why I kinda appreciated his role in Sonic Forces of all games, in fact. Even if it was a fluke, in Forces he was the leader of the Resistance, and this reinstated and reminded us that he wasn't just a dumb goofball or an anger-issued brute, but instead a spiritual and laid-back guy with a tough outer shell. Now, more writing like that please, Sonic Team. Overall, I really like Knuckles' story, and I wouldn't mind having him back as a future gameplay style.
I'm at peace once more.
Okay. One has to wonder. In fact, more than one person has to ask. In the world of speedy platformer animals like Sonic the Hedgehog, Tails, Knuckles, Amy Rose, possibly more. What exactly was the purpose of Big the Cat? I mean, you know what? Nah. Let's just get into the story and I'll elaborate as I go along, okay? One night, a lazy and easygoing cat named Big is just living his life and sleeping under the stars. But just then his frog companion, Froggy, starts acting weird and runs away from him when Chaos interacts with him. So, Big instantly wakes up and goes after Froggy immediately in a panic. Oh, what? What was that? What else? Well, that's literally it. Big's story is essentially just him on a big, wild goose chase after Froggy. I wish I was joking. Later on, after a few levels, he meets up with Tails, who has been after Froggy himself after he swallowed a yellow Chaos Emerald that had actually been inside Froggy on Tails' side of the story. He then lets go of Froggy, possibly in pure fright because, I mean, Big's a massive unit to be fair. So after finding Froggy again, one of Eggman's robots then takes Froggy right from Big's hands, and as a kid, watching the start screen's many demo of the cutscenes, seeing Big flap his arms like a big ol'... well, Big, it's just hilarious and still gets a great chuckle out of me to this day. Big now aboards the egg carrier. How? I don't actually know, they don't explain it. And whilst on board the egg carrier, he goes through the hot shelter and then gets Froggy. Christ, you complain about how many times Elise was captured, try Froggy on for size. And so Big gets taken back to the past.
Play the shitty games that suck ass.
He then finds himself in the tribe's land and meets up with Tikal, who's having her first encounter with Chaos. But Big himself must have some kind of static flying around in his head right now, since he doesn't even bother questioning anything about it and just decides to haul butt and go home since he has Froggy now. Fair enough, get out of this game. Just as he's on his way there, he meets up with Dr. Eggman and Chaos, who have caught him trying to escape. Froggy is then taken over by Chaos, who takes his tail and devours another 2 sets of Chaos Emeralds, transforming him into Chaos 6. Just then Sonic appears and says to Big that he'll help get Froggy back. And this is where we get to see Big's side of the boss fight. Yes, you heard me right, he has his own rendition of the Chaos 6 battle, believe it or not. And...
Aim for the frog and cast your lure.
Just... whatever. And then with Sonic taking over the rest, he pulls a GTA and steals Tails' tornado.
What an asshole!
What? Well, okay, to be fair, he didn't understand it belonged to them, and he didn't have another way of getting off the ship, so... fair enough, I guess? And hey presto! Big is now home free, and it just ends him having a great old time with his boy Froggy. Okay, whereas I do agree that Big the Cat is probably the worst character to play as in this game, I wouldn't say he's a total blight on humanity as much as everyone else makes him out to be. Like, what's so bad about him? I mean, I can see why not many like him or even love him, but I just get the impression that he's totally oblivious to what's going on and he just wants to live his life in the forest free from danger. Almost as if he doesn't want to be in the situation himself. But saying all that, why was he even included? Well, the reasons are somewhat understandable and just weird at the same time. Apparently Sonic Team wanted to include a gameplay style that would perplex gamers and show off the capabilities of the Sega Dreamcast, making his gameplay be about fishing. Wasn't there like a few other titles Sega made about fishing before? And heck, wasn't there even another fishing game on the Sega Dreamcast with its own controller included as well? Well, okay, but this is a Sonic game. Why the hell is fishing a part of a Sonic game? Well, it's not all boring actually. Surprisingly enough, there's actually a few redeeming factors in his gameplay, but I'll get into that much later. But my opinion on Big right now is that he's not really loathsome or annoying to any degree. But he's also far from a great character as well. At least in this game anyway. Oh, by the way, that wasn't me skipping through his story quickly or anything. The story is just that short compared to the others, so... Hey guys, remember Amy from Sonic CD? Yeah? Remember her classic design? Well, now she's rocking her own look, I guess. Anyway, it turns out she's apparently just another part of the city by living daily life, shopping and such. One day while doing just that, she's reminiscing on the old times of Sonic CD when her and Sonic were running around, basically trying to escape Metal Sonic and Eggman and Little Planet. It's a really nice touch, if I might add. It gives a nice contrast between the classics and this new wave of Sonic, with it being in 3D obviously, if you catch my Sonic drift.
That was terrible!
Horrendous!
I'm offended!
I'm appalled!
So what are we gonna do?
What else? Email it to everybody we know!
Good idea.
Just then the sunlight blocks out and the city darkens. Dr. Eggman's egg carrier covers the sky and a small bird falls and hits Amy right in the face as a green Dr. Cortex looking ass follows. And they hide in the nearby diner for free Wi-Fi. So now Amy promises the bird that she'll protect him or her from the robot and basically find out where the bird's family is. It's a nice setup for the story and having Amy here is kinda nice. So a while later Amy finds Sonic wandering around in the streets and asks him for help to find the bird's family. Sonic, being the absolute chad he is, runs away and... Actually no, he's got a good reason to run away for now since Tails might be fucking dead after all. But anyway, they run around for a while and they stumble upon Twinkle Park. So Amy, being the completely oblivious fangirl she is, just decides to take a break by going into the theme park with Sonic. But halfway through going in, Amy and Sonic get separated, leading Zero, the robot, to kidnap Amy and take her back to the egg carrier. Actually, looking at this jail cell now is a lot more creepy than how it was as a kid. I don't know how to describe it. Dr. Eggman's top robot, I guess, is sent to check up on Amy and retrieve the bird from her. This robot is called E102 Gamma, and at first he seems to just be another one of Eggman's robots. But after Gamma showing signs of being somewhat oblivious to what he's even doing there in the first place, Amy then sees a kind of innocence within him when the bird stares him right in the face. Gamma then opens the bars and lets Amy go. I'll develop more on this when I get to Gamma's story since it has more of an impact there than it does here, so moving on. One whack-a-mole game and a trip down the egg carrier later, and Amy is taken away to the tribe's land. Here we see Tikal seeing chaos in the Chow and... well, that's really it. Filler much? As Amy is sent back to the egg carrier, she goes out to the deck and is confronted by Dr. Eggman, who then takes the blue Chaos Emerald from the bird. Gamma is then commanded to fight Sonic, but Amy is like,
Stop! You violated the law!
and stops their fight before things get messy. After Amy stops him, however, Tails is like,
Oh hell no!
and he flies down to Station Square. As they land, Amy reflects on what just happened on the airship and believes that she should be more independent for herself and start relying on others as much. Mostly Sonic for rescuing her so much. This I like, whereas she's not as developed as Tails, and it was entirely her fault for running off into the theme park and getting herself kidnapped. I still enjoy this moment of beginning to think that she should start taking on problems herself rather than relying on others. Another great moral this game conveys. Well, albeit being a little bit half-baked and somewhat similar to Tails' moral, but here it's a little different, I guess. So after looking at the bird's pendant, she becomes more motivated. Even if she did just come out of danger herself, it's nice to see that Amy is willing to put herself back in the line of fire to help those in need. After running through Robotropolis or Metropolis or whatever Tropolis, Amy decides that it's best to look on the ruins of the egg carrier and see if they made it through the carrier's destruction and fall into the sea. Later when they arrive there, they do actually find the bird's family, but... They are attacked by the trash can himself, Zero. This time Amy is pissed, and she has had it with being chased and is ready to take on Zero and put him out of commission forever. This is what I was talking about earlier. They foreshadow her rise to independence by steadily taking on Eggman's base. And then when the robot that has been causing her anxiety the whole game appears to hurt them, this is it, Chief. That robot can go eat shit and die. She has her hammer and its face will be on the other edge of it. I still love her emotion of disgust when Zero appears. It's pure adrenaline and anger coming from Amy, which is somewhat surprising since this is probably the angriest she's ever been to my knowledge. So with Zero being turned to Zero... Okay, hey! Hey, that's strike 1 for Amy. The bird then returns to their family safe and sound, and it was all thanks to Amy for pulling through and facing her fears. Now, the general consensus of Amy's character is pretty split for some people. Some think she's the voice of reason, a kind-hearted individual, and her character matters loads to the story's adventures in the series like this game, Adventure 2, etc. Whilst others absolutely despise her for being really annoying, a fangirl who unhealthily fantasizes over her hero way too much, and is somewhat of a filler love interest slot. Amy Rose to me was always a likeable character. I liked her kind-hearted nature and her personality and her character arc here in this game. Sure, she had supposed flaws of being overly lovesick, but honestly, those flaws somewhat added to her personality in my opinion. Her story in this game is definitely the most underrated if I'm honest. Whereas Tails' independent story was about growing up and standing up for himself, Amy's was about responsibility and standing up for herself. Overall, I really enjoyed Amy's campaign to say the very least. And I wouldn't mind her taking the wheel as a gameplay style in the future. But saying that, who's really to know if Sega will take on such a bold feat? Either way, Amy's story, really like it. The final character story we have here is the experimental campaign of E102 codenamed Gamma. First of all, we start in the lobby of Eggman's First of all, we start at the lobby of Dr. Eggman's base, and we hear the voice of a very somber and quiet Dr. Eggman. He throws the switch and like Frankenstein, Gamma is born. Dr. Eggman explains to Gamma that he is the second of his E-series of robots, and he has to go through a shooting range to test out his abilities, which translates beautifully to his new gameplay style. So after going through the range, Gamma returns to the good doctor to be put up against his predecessor E101 Beta. A name which perfectly explains his character, by the way, more on that later. And both Gamma and Beta are set to fight to determine who is better. Gamma comes out top dog and Beta pleads that Eggman takes him with him, to which Eggman says they could always use a few new spare parts. That's cold. So much later on in a scene, surely parodying Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So, Dr. Eggman goes on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Gamma and his other E-series brethren are commissioned to seek and capture Froggy, which bleeds into when Big had Froggy taken from him earlier. Tikal takes him back to the past.
He's the angry video game nerd.
I thought I already made that joke. Here Gamma is shown the Chow, but Tikal warns him not to go any closer. She then explains to Gamma that Chaos is actually a very loving and careful creature who wants peace for the Chow, making him their guardian. Just then Gamma is whisked back to the egg carrier's lobby and gives back the Froggo. Just as he does so, Gamma sees the E-series be rid of right before his eyes because they failed to do the thing he did, further foreshadowing Eggman's dark heart. As if that weren't enough, Gamma is ordered to find Amy and the bird, but instead he accidentally walks into a room that is slowly rebuilding Beta to be improved. And this scene, despite being aged like last year's milk, still conveys a very strong reaction of shock from Gamma.
Beta.
Shaking off what he saw, Gamma then advances onward to the cell room to find Amy and the bird. But as Amy shrugs back no, Gamma kinda concedes and asks why.
None of your business, why not? I want to know why you want it.
Data unavailable.
You don't even know? I bet you'd be mean to him, you bully. Why not help us out instead?
Right after calling Gamma a bully, she asks him to let her out. Gamma then has a malfunction of sorts, and this is where Amy feels some amount of sorrow for Gamma.
Why try to save that which is useless to you? Does not compute.
I feel sorry for you. Eggman failed to give you feelings.
Always being forced to obey his master no matter what and having no say in the matter at all. Almost as if Eggman is controlling Gamma 24/7 like a puppet on a string. Gamma becomes convinced to help by seeing something within the bird, which will make a lot more sense later. He then frees Amy and tells her to escape. Amy then says goodbye and tells him that he isn't as heartless as she thought, and makes a run for it before she's caught again.
Hurry, we'll be arriving at the Mystic Ruins base soon.
So, you're not like those other robots, huh? You truly are a good person inside, aren't you? I guess we can be friends then. Take care, okay?
This scene here is very integral to Gamma himself as a character. He finds it deep within himself to find the humanity to let Amy out and disobey Eggman for a change. Something he had always done since his birth pretty much. This scene really conveys a good message in a character realising that they can choose to be under Eggman's rule, serve evil, and rot eventually when he messes up, which then can lead to another similar fate as his fallen brother. Or he can be free. Live his life the way he wanted to. Be free from the shackles of someone else's control. It's a very powerful scene in my opinion, and yes, like I keep reiterating, it's aged terribly. But back then, this would have been some emotional stuff. And for a Sonic game, this is kind of breaking new ground. So, shortly after obtaining the jet booster, Gamma is called up to the deck to destroy Sonic. And only in this version, Gamma actually wins. Yeah. Eggman's machine that he didn't pilot in any way becomes victorious against the very mammal who's beat him constantly throughout the years. This is an excellent way to show how highly Eggman thinks of Gamma. So then he points his weapon straight for Sonic and is about to fire until Amy tells him to stop, kinda like how she did to Sonic in his story. As Amy and Tails leave for Station Square, Gamma leaves the ship too. He then suspends his descent from the egg carrier thinking about what his next move will be. And ultimately he decides to rebel against Eggman and save his E-Series brethren from freeing the animals trapped inside them. Yes, a very simple game mechanic that we have seen Sonic, Tails, Knuckles and Knuckles perform is translated into part of this game's narrative. For a while the story is a bit formulaic. Gamma goes after the E-Series and sets them free. But when he's aboard the egg carrier and realises that he's the only one left to be freed, E-102 Beta Mark II is completed, and is roaming the egg carrier, essentially waiting for Gamma to fight him.
Gamma. Beta.
As Gamma and Beta duke it out in the engine of the ship, in an absolutely epic boss fight that aren't for the faint of heart, or in gaming terms, scrubs, Gamma comes out on top and finally gives Beta the finishing blow. But in a sense of robotic pride, Beta returns the favour, and we see a damaged Gamma struggle across the floor, finally giving in to his fate and allowing him to self-destruct eventually, freeing his own captured animal. And god fucking damn it, Sega. You just had to make us feel emotional, didn't you? Well, anyway, this ending is a very heartfelt one and is praised as one of the best campaigns for a good reason. Hell, it's almost as saddening as it is to me when Shadow's supposed death in Sonic Adventure 2 happened. But saying that, I gotta give Gamma more sad points because he never really does come back. Kinda similar to Chip in Sonic Unleashed. Well, not in robot form anyway. The pink bird we see at the end of Amy's story was actually Gamma himself. And now Gamma is happy to live a life back with his family in the wild. So it's not all doom and gloom, I guess. E102 Gamma is a great example of a one and done character. It's a tragic story of what happens when a being is brought into the world and corrupted and threatened by its creator, and that they can rise above it and decide where their path can lead in life. My take in this entire game is that the writing, albeit being a little aged, which does affect some delivery and voice acting and the quality of the animation and cutscenes, but you know what? I don't care. The quality of the game is still present, and it's flat out ridiculous that to expect a game from 1996 originally to be up to the standards of today's narratives with games like Crash Bandicoot, Ocarina of Time, and even Spyro the Dragon still being praised despite their shortcomings. Which, rightfully so by the way, I'm not objecting to those games in the slightest, since I do agree with them as well. But what is it with some people against Sonic Adventure? I just don't get it. Whereas not being my favourite of the Sonic stories, I'll definitely say that this game's story was amazing and I adore it. I'll put a pin in it for there though. Now on to the gameplay! You know, the very thing you came to experience. Okay, so first up is Sonic the Hedgehog himself, the Hog of the Hour.
No!
Sonic's controls are pretty smooth. In fact, they're even more than that. They're a fantastic translation from 3D to 2D. He has this great sense of picking up momentum and allowing you to maintain the speed to the point where it feels completely up to you about how fast you can go and what your next move will be. Some people would object and say it's a little too hard to control sometimes, with Sonic sometimes clipping through the terrain and falling through. And honestly, granted, it actually does happen a couple of times admittedly. And one of the biggest offenders is the infamous falling through the loop in Emerald Coast. But why would you stop there anyway? I don't know. It's an automated segment and you're supposed to go through it. Sonic can also jump and roll into a ball, and gets a nice amount of airtime to give you the choice to make a more careful jump or press the jump button twice to perform the new homing attack, where he can chain a burst of his normal jumping attacks into a continuous line of attacks into enemies. It's a pretty helpful mechanic and it would stay a staple in the series for many of Sonic's 3D outings. But despite how attractive the homing attack looks, much like that of a diamond in Minecraft, you can still use the normal method of jumping into an enemy and taking it out. Pretty simple stuff. Another thing you can do is cancelling your jump to determine a better landing. This is done by pressing the action button whilst midair. And let me tell you, in levels where more precise platforming is required like Twinkle Park, it's so helpful, trust me. Other game mechanics that return from the past are the slope level design, the rings, the score counter in the corner, springs, item boxes scattered throughout the levels, the constant reminder that death is inevitable. The gang's all here. Sometimes they'll throw new sub-mechanics like Casinoopolis' ring dispenser that lift you up to the end of the act when you get enough rings, the dodgems in Twinkle Park, the running on the wall segment in Lost World, the snowboarding in Ice Cap, amongst many others. And it does a solid job in keeping the experience fresh and interesting for replayability or repeat playthroughs. Sonic and the other characters can also find these circular glowing rings within the hub worlds. For Sonic, these are the Lightspeed Dash, which allows him to charge up and shoot across a line of rings, which feels really satisfying in my opinion. The Crystal Ring, which makes it a lot faster. And finally, the Mystic Light, which allows for the Lightspeed Dash to actually attack enemies, making it the Lightspeed Attack. More or less, Sonic controls amazingly, and it's definitely my second favourite control scheme for the Blue Blur himself next to Adventure 2 in 3D. Perhaps even in general, actually. And I sincerely hope one day we can see this style of Sonic gameplay return in the near future, as I really think there's potential to make this style of Sonic, well, better. I mean, the boost formula is okay and everything, but look at this, there's much more potential in my opinion. And it's just a shame that we never got to see that potential fully realised before, well, 06 went and ruined it. Either way, love Sonic's gameplay. Next up is the golden fennec boy himself, Tailsies. So, in the past, Tails basically played like a slightly slower version of Sonic with the ability to take flight and soar through the air like Spyro or the Wing Cap from Mario 64. Only exception is that you can propel yourself high and up into the air like a helicopter before he gets tired and falls. So how does Tails play in Sonic Adventure 1? Absolutely incredible! Tails himself is much like Sonic's gameplay but a little slower, which is neato since they're staying pretty consistent for Tails' gameplay if you think about it. But he can fly upwards by holding the jump button to accommodate the new 3D style. And then when you see that you have no tails left and the spinny blade of his tails, he'll slowly glide downwards. His tails can still hurt enemies like it did in the past, without making him entirely vulnerable since you can still be hit by below. Cool ROMs.
Do what you want 'cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
Thanks for music, never really download.
His action button is using his tails to surround him with a barrier by spinning around really fast. Just like that of Crash Bandicoot, but not as continuous. Wait, what about his spin dash? Sonic has it, so where's Tails' end of the bargain? Well, pressing the action button whilst running replaces his spin dash with the roll attack. I'm okay with that. I mean, sure, Tails having one move less in order to make room for a new one might peeve a few people, but I don't really see it as that much of a big deal. I more or less see it as though Sonic Team were trying to experiment with a new gameplay style. Plus it kinda cements Sonic as the fastest since it's always been his title. Overall, I'm okay with Tails' new attack and dare I say, I may even love it and say it's a worthy sacrifice. I mean, it turned out to be really useful on the ground and the roll can help Tails pick up momentum whilst going downhill. Especially in levels like Windy Valley. It gives off such a great feel for being able to pull it off. All of Tails' moves are basically Sonic's, but this time around we're pinned against mostly Sonic himself in the race to the finish. The one exception being Tails going up against Jim Carrey himself. It's actually not a nice detail since in Sonic's gameplay, not just in this game but pretty much 2 and 3 and K, we've seen Tails try to keep up with Sonic behind all the time, and now we're able to see what that was like for him. Nice touch. Tails only really gets 2 upgrades throughout the entire game. One of these being the slabs of metal to be put on his shoes that helps his flying speed be bumped up a little, and a purple ribbon that allows him to buff up his tail spin attack by allowing you to infinitely spin. Nothing else much to say really. Want to see Tails become a ballerina? Well, you're gonna love this game. Tails himself is really fun to play as in this game. Dare I say, this game takes my favourite spot for Tails gameplay in the series. I'm not kidding. Fly high, my boy. Okay, so this boy don't chuckle. And that's no joke. He's actually a little stoic in this game, to be honest. Useless information aside, Knuckles plays a little more differently than Sonic and Tails, but still being somewhat similar to them in a sense. Knuckles isn't really about racing through levels, but instead takes notes from Sonic 3 and Knuckles' gameplay and exploration by having him explore parts of the levels that Sonic or Tails might not have been able to explore beforehand. To me anyway, this makes up for the fact that Sonic's levels aren't replayable as Knuckles in this game. Since vice versa, Sonic's gameplay and his levels wouldn't work. Plus, a third Sonic copy would be running the game really dry, don't you think? So much like the past, Knuckles can glide by holding the jump button. He can punch a 3-hit combo, roll into a ball like Tails could, and then he can cling to walls like Spider-Man by gliding into a nearby wall. His gameplay is pretty akin to that of a collectathon like Banjo-Kazooie or, well, a game series that I've never heard of, and I personally like this change in gameplay. I mean, you can still go fast, so... Knuckles' gameplay is based around going after these 3 shards of the Master Emerald, and at the bottom of the screen there'll be these 3 boxes to help you as well, to tell you how close you are to an emerald shard via a colour code, blue being somewhat close, green being just a little closer, and red being is right there, get quick. But yeah, this is the setup of all of Knuckles' levels and it's pretty fun. The levels are also designed to reward you for being experimental as well by giving you certain extra lives, item boxes, you know, the works. Knuckles is, god how many times am I going to say that, upgrades of the shovel claw to allow him to dig underground, Rather awkwardly, might I add, since you have to press jump and the action button at the same time in order to do it. And then there's the fighting gloves that allow him to charge up a surge of energy and unleash it onto enemies, almost like Sonic's lightspeed attack ability. So Nucky Boy is pretty nice gameplay wise, but I kinda prefer his gameplay in the classic titles, and especially Sonic Adventure 2. But overall I find them to be fun. It's a nice way of incorporating a collectathon style into the series, and to my delight it's here to stay for the next title as well. Okay, look. It goes without saying that Duke Big the Nukem Cat is a colossal chip in the smooth surface that is this game. But honestly, I don't think his gameplay is really terrible at all. I mean, sure, it isn't needed to be in the game, but if you actually dig a little deeper in this character, he's not as straight to the point as fishy win-win as people might think. Okay, so Big isn't platforming at all. He can't fly, he can't treasure hunt, he can't shoot things, he can't be a professor at advanced quantum physics, although I don't know about that one. Well, it's not a badly implemented mechanic by any means, but like I said, why is it in a Sonic game? I mean, I could maybe get behind this if it was like a mini game or a side thing, but an actual mandatory thing to achieve the final campaign? Even a Dreamcast era fanboy like myself can't defend this. Big's gameplay whilst fishing is like this. You press the action button to cast your line over a body of water, and then when a fish or froggy bites the lure, you hold down and reel him in with the action or jump button. Riveting. Alongside the fishing gameplay, however, you can actually explore the levels themselves via underwater caverns, or something along the likes of that. I'll admit, I was actually kinda intrigued when exploring these areas since they're what I'd like Big to be. Something that resembles a platformer. Imagine if Big the Cat went absolute apeshit and got angry when he realised that Froggy was missing or captured. And what if Big went from a big soft log to a massive killing machine that destroyed any badnik in his way? That'd be hysterical and kinda awesome. It'd make a lot of sense too, since John St. John, the voice of Duke Nukem, is actually voicing Big the Cat. Unfortunately though, we got this instead. And that's what I'm reviewing today. So all in all, you don't need me to tell you that Big the Cat's gameplay isn't all that good. However, if you played fishing games before, you might get a kick out of it. Big's power-ups are just a range of lore power-ups and a belt that allows you to float above water, and make it really easy to catch Froggy, making your playthrough go by really quickly if you want to get back to the other characters. Like, take a guess how long it took me to beat this purple beefcake story. Around 30 minutes. And that was me taking my time to explore too. Sure, I'm basically saying it only gets bad for a measly 30 minutes or so, but it's really not worth complaining about if the story is like 50 minutes tops if you know what you're doing. Overall, I wouldn't call Big an abomination to gaming, but I wouldn't praise his gameplay either. Big is fine, that's all I can say. He's a character that I can't bring myself to hate, but I can't really like either. He's just this big, funny, running joke too, since games like Adventure 2, Secret Rings, and maybe Sega All-Stars, he's solely there for a big laugh. He's even coming back for Team Sonic Racing. What are the odds? Amy Rose from the epitome of a niche game in its series is also here. Well, until 2011 when, you know, Taxman and Stealth made that port. Anywho, Amy in this game is quite decisive to a lot of people. Some are like, ugh, why is she here? And her gameplay is really slow and boring compared to the others. And others are like, she's actually pretty fun, sure she isn't fast, but her hammer is pretty cool and benefits her gameplay quite well. And I fall in the latter statement. Yeah, I enjoy Amy's gameplay. Her slightly slower speed never really bothered me at all. It's a hell of a lot better than how she was in 06, I'll say that much. And after a while, you get used to it. Amy's controls are loosely based around how Sonic plays, but without most of his moves, as instead we have this big massive hammer that just randomly appears in Amy's hand out of nowhere. Anyway, her speed, like I said before, isn't really as fast as most of the characters, but she is certainly faster than Big. By pressing the action button, you can hit things with Amy's Pico Pico hammer. Pressing and running at high speed will also allow Amy to clear some heights that can be really useful in her levels. Whilst mid-air, you can also do the spinny hammer attack that can help you defend yourself whilst airborne, and that's really it. She isn't really as in-depth as the others, minus Big, but I still think her gameplay is pretty fun, and it's simple to pick up and play. Her levels are more akin to classic monster movies or games like The Shining or Resident Evil 3. By that I mean, Amy is being chased by a monstrous robot looking ass named Zero. You can hurt Zero to stun him for a while, but he doesn't really die like the other badniks. This badnik is indestructible, and he makes it his very mission to hunt down Amy Rose. And even after the egg carrier crashed, he still followed Amy around, and the final encounter with him is easily one of the best bosses in the game. It feels so good to ram that big hammer down his head and watch him explode. Finally, the stalker motherfricker is gone. Amy's two upgrades are the warrior feather and the long hammer. These upgrades allow Amy to spin her hammer around her to cause harm to enemies nearby. That's really it. Amy is really simplistic and doesn't offer a lot of depth, but I kinda appreciate that. Her gameplay doesn't really need to be a 10-layered cake to be good. Instead, she's a fun, more traditional platforming treat to play. Personally, I never had much of an issue trying to gain momentum when she starts running. She's always been more of an acrobatic type than a speed type in the games anyway, as demonstrated in Heroes and the multiplayer of SA2. Plus, she's wearing big red boots. It's kinda understandable how she can't run as fast. Amy is pretty fun to play as in this game, and I really enjoyed her gameplay. Nice going, Rosie Rascal. So, the final character campaign in this game is E102 Gamma, and he may just be one of the most unique Sonic characters that has ever been playable. Reason being is that he's a badnik, who is playable. The very thing Sonic has been smashing for ages is now playable, integral piece to the story. Nice. Well, first of all, Gamma's gameplay style is also quite different to all of the other characters. Whereas yes, he can platform, he has a weapon on hand. Literally. Gamma can lock onto different objects by pressing down the action button and let the laser scan for enemies and such. It's Gamma's only attack to defend himself, and it's pretty powerful at that. And it's so satisfying seeing the oncoming barrage of enemies blow up right in front of the very thing you're destroying. Damn, that's kind of fucking dark, but okay, whatever. Something pretty unique and kinda blaster mastery about Gamma's story is that in levels, the timer actually goes down instead of up. And Gamma needs to cause all sorts of carnage and high velocity massacre against his own kind in order to make his way up to the final challenge. These challenges and questions being the E-series robots apart from the first two levels because of story reasons. Gamma will essentially enter these mini-boss segments and rage against the machine opposing him. Sadly, the E's aren't very tough and don't put up much of a fight, but I appreciate the experimentation in Gamma's levels. Thank you, Sonic Team, very cool. But you could have made them a bit harder, come on. Gamma's upgrades offer slight changes to his gun, and a really useful glide ability in the jet booster. They can really help in later levels, like in the Hot Shelter or Red Mountain especially, since levels just go, "Thought we were getting easier? Well guess what, clown, you're being put up against moving trains, lava seeping through the floor and platforms galore. Have a nice life, you frickin' idiot." E102 Gamma was a very unique take on a Sonic character, and he still stands tall on the podium of holy shit, why the hecking frick is this character so underappreciated? Dare I say, there's a bit of Gamma on all of us. And so on and so forth. Okay, all you need to know is that he tugged on a few heartstrings for some players in this game. And rightfully so. I remember feeling really sad after coming out of Gamma's story in one playthrough as a kid. I don't know, live long the E-series and subscribe to Lenn256i. So, now we've got the main meat and potatoes of the gameplay out of the way, the characters all share a few core elements throughout the game itself. For example, the entire game takes place within 3, or technically 4, large hub worlds. These are the Mystic Ruins, the city of Station Square, the Mystic Ruins in the past where the Echidna tribe used to rule over, and finally the Egg Carrier. All of these hubs feel so alive and interconnected, almost like they wanted to present a living, breathing world where actual people populate areas in Station Square, wildlife grows in the Mystic Ruins, and machinery festers in the Egg Carrier. They're great, and I really miss high quality world building like this in a Sonic game. Well, like I said, Forces almost got it right, but that'd be the understatement of the millennium now, wouldn't it? I've heard many criticise the hub worlds as needless and just filler to pad out the game since they don't add anything into the gameplay, in their opinion. And whereas I see their point, I also got stuck a few times as a child myself. but I honestly don't see that as a negative personally for hub worlds as a concept. Now, could these hub worlds have been executed better? Yeah, but there is a hint bubble in the same area in every hub world. Did you just go to that? Now, it could be for my love of open world and explorative games like Spyro, Spider-Man 2, Jak and Daxter, etc. But even still, I never really got stuck for more than an hour or so, at least I don't remember from my childhood. Plus the hubs really do make you feel like you're exploring this one big piece of Sonic's world, and the looming feeling of the possibility of letting everything be lost, overtaken and ruled by Dr. Eggman is that one driving strength that motivates the characters to saving their world. So needless to say, I like the hubs, and personally I wouldn't mind them coming back for a future title, especially since Unleashed showed that the games can still handle them well enough. Another nice bonus to these hubs after you've beaten the main storyline of all campaigns is the mission mode. This is where you go and seek out these card looking things that tell you a hint, giving you an idea on where to go next. And let me tell you, some of these are a fucking nightmare. Try running down that segment in Lost World while collecting flags, as well as making sure you're not taken out by the big fiery boulder from hell that follows you. Okay, not that bad? Okay, try Tails' flag mission when he scales down the avalanche hill in Ice Cap, okay? Oh? Still not enough, motherfricker? You wanna try a harder one? You sure? Well, try the touch the ring line in Sonic's snowboard section of Ice Cap. Jesus, on an escalator is this a kick to the nuts. Within the hub worlds is also the Chill Garden, and it's okay. I adore the one in SA2 a lot more, but this one is just kinda there. Apparently this version of the game has more content in it to help add more layers to this feature, and maybe it does, but maybe nostalgia faded my opinion too much on which one is better, and I choose SA2. Raising the Chill is still a fun bonus though, if you're looking to extend your game time and have a knack for stuff like Pokemon, Tamagotchi, or any other care simulators like that. This will be right up your alley. I'll explain more of this in detail when I get to my Sonic Adventure 2 review, but what you do here is basically feed your Chill different types of animals from what you've collected in the stages. There's also a black market that you can buy all sorts of stuff from. For example, your Chill can be leveled up to improve its running speed, swimming speed, strength, etc. So what else is there? Oh yeah, also in the GameCube version, or the earlier version of the PC release of this game, you can actually unlock and play the classic Game Gear titles from back in the 90s. Meaning, yeah, you have Sonic Triple Trouble, Tails Adventure, Sky Patrol, the OG Sonic the Hedgehog conversion that was also in the Master System, and much more. Seriously, you have a goldmine here and it helped me discover so many underrated cult classics from when I was young. Really cool. So Sonic Adventure also has these emblems that you collect. Some are hidden in the hubs, some are achieved by raising Chill and beating certain elements in the story, etc. So what does getting all of them do exactly? Well, it gives you a pat on the back and a diploma in advanced robotics, silly. Close enough. Metal Sonic is an extra playable skin for Sonic. Fitting, but kinda disappointing at the same time. Don't expect him to play anything like he did in CD though, he's more or less Sonic 2.0, which is what he is anyway, so yeah, but you get me though. I want to shoot lasers at badniks, not homing attack them, that's what I could do as Sonic. What's the point of adding Metal Sonic then? So overall, the gameplay of Sonic Adventure, in my honest opinion, is still really good and fun. Sonic Adventure really is a you either love it or you hate it type of game. You see, most Sonic games nowadays tend to only feature Sonic as the main attraction, which I definitely agree with by the way. But because of how they handled it in more, recent games, the other characters in the series have taken a back seat in the games and the gameplay department, making them practically useless unless it's a spin-off game like All-Stars Racing, Tennis, Sonic Dash, etc. And I absolutely hate this. It's one of the few things I admire about Forces in adding Shadow as DLC, but even then he's just a copy of Sonic. But fans of Knuckles, Amy, Tails, Silver, Rouge, Metal, or hell even Big the Cat, God forbid, don't even get to experience the blistering speed-based gameplay of their favourite characters anymore. And that really sucks. And where there's some iconic characters at the time tried to make the leap and fail, Sonic was able to climb back up even after that absence of no games during the late 90s. And that has to mean something. So, it's the soundtrack, and unlike a smoky, it don't choky. Because this soundtrack is awesome. The soundtrack of this game was led by Jun Suno, who's been making music for the series since the third title and Knuckles. He and his team really poured his heart and soul into making the soundtracks sound like the places they're in. You have your tracks that set a peaceful atmosphere like the streets of Station Square, the Mystic Ruins, Windy Valley's first part, Emerald Coast, and more. And then you have the more intense and rocking tracks like the Invincibility theme, Speed Highway, Inside Red Mountain, and Oh Sweet Mother of Guy Fury, Final Egg's second part. Just take a listen to these jams. Call it butt rock all you want, but I'm definitely not the only one who can't get enough of this block of cheddar that is this game's music. This game's OST is definitely within my top 5 Sonic soundtracks for sure. Great work Sonic Team's A-Team on the sound team, you made a near enough perfect soundtrack for a 3D Sonic title. And it's one I keep developing earworms for even in my teen years today. Another thing I almost forgot to mention was that Sonic Adventure's soundtrack is actually quite unique in the fact that it actually features character themes for each character. And if it's one thing I can compliment them on, it's the fact that it really tells each character's personality really well. For example, Sonic's theme is upbeat and rockin', Tails is kinda the same but uses good use of the sitar, Knuckles' goes for an R&B/rap kinda style that really fits his laid back personality and tone in this game, Amy's is jazzy and playful, Big the Cat's theme is just ridiculously silly which is really fitting, and E102 Gamma's is really somber and uses good use of synthesizers and the piano. And then there's separate character themes like Tikals, Chaoses, and much more. Now on to the voice talent that brings these rainbow coloured animals to life. First up we have Blue McGee himself, and man, the series has been known for being a bit of a shit show with its constant changes in voice actors over the last 2 decades. It required a voice that perfectly captured the character in the games. One that would not only sound like Sonic, but will be Sonic. And Sega brought in a man named Ryan Drummond, and he is my favourite voice out of the main 3 video game voices we've had for the character so far.
Tails? Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah! I guess Eggman's got one of them, but the other one's safe. That guy must be desperate. No problem. He's just a chunk of cheesy hardware.
Ryan really knew how to portray Sonic in this game. Well, do his best anyway, mainly because the cutscenes were apparently directed in such a way where they tell their actors what to say and how to say it without any visual reference in a cutscene or even an image. Either way, I still really adore the voice Ryan gave him, and it's a good start for revving up to making Sonic amazing in the next 2 games. Excellent work by Ryan. So Eggman is voiced by the late Mr. Dean Bristow, and he really gave it his all for voicing Eggman in this game.
You know nothing, fool. It's chaos.
Oh, yes! It's just as the stone tablets predicted. His strength increases every time I feed him a Chaos Emerald. With all 7 emeralds in him, he'll be invincible and work for me. At this. Get a load of this. Get a load of this. Don't get too many ideas, you fools. You haven't seen the power this vessel really has.
He sounds so powerful sometimes, giving a really threatening tone. I really miss Deem's portrayal since, despite Mike Pollock's great performance later in the series, Deem may just be that little bit better to me. Tails in this game is actually being voiced by a little boy to stay genuine, I guess? Well, anyway, Tails is voiced by a name called Corey Bringus, and he does a good job, if a little flat sometimes.
That means his 2 to our 1, and that's not good. Come on, Sonic, we need to get busy! Hey, we can't let him get away! Let's get to my workshop and we'll take the tornado! Never mind that. Get up and follow me. Angel Island is falling again.
He does his job the best in the more somber and serious scenes within the game, so I'd say he does his job well. Knuckles in this game only is voiced by Michael McGarn, and I really like this iteration of him. Knuckles in this game is still the same dim-witted and somewhat antisocial guy as he was in the previous game. Therefore, I think Michael's soft-spoken voice did a nice job in conveying Knuckles' character in this game.
Where am I? This is very strange. Hey, isn't that one of Eggman's robots? I know. I'll follow it back to Eggman's base. Here I come, Eggman. Just what I thought. Time to make a house call. This should do it. Perfect. All is well now.
I'm sure they could have done better in SA2 if they kept Michael, but you know what, Michael? You did a good PS Vo. Next up is the hopeless fangirl of Sonic, Amy Red Rose, and she's voiced by a woman called Jennifer Dulliard. And she's definitely my favourite voice for Amy in the entire series as well.
It's the good old days. Hanging out with my hero, Sonic. Chasing bad guys. And blowing them away. But now he's gone. And there's nothing left to do. I pity you. Love is not part of your programming. You are missing something good. I'll help you find your family. Does Eggman have them captive now? I bet he does. So I'll help you find your family. I've come this far. I may as well go all the way. That robot said Dr. Eggman's base is in the Mystic Ruins. So what do you say we check it out?
She sounds really energetic and full of joy, something that Amy always was since Sonic CD in my opinion. One thing I noticed as well is that Jennifer is only noted in this role in her entire career as a voice actress. Well, unless she chose not to follow up her career, I don't know. And the last of the main cast made of brass that is surely not crass, E102 Gas.
I'm beginning to feel like a rap god.
Gamma. He was voiced by a man called Steve Brody, and for a robotic voice he really did a good job in showing a lot of emotion in the role of being exactly a robot.
Units remaining. Gamma. Beta.
Either way, really great character, and may he always be in our hearts with a twinkle in his eye, further establishing his heroism and what he's done for this country. That's right, Gamma was Scottish, new headcanon. Tikal was voiced by a woman called Alara Distler, but yeah, I really like the voice that Alara gave her since she comes across as a caring and selfless individual.
I beg of you, hear me now. father is coming here soon, and I fear what may happen. You must take everyone away from here. Oh, please.
Also, fun fact, her name is apparently named after a Mayan ancient city. Yeah. And considering that Sonic Team actually took a vacation around the world, more on that later, and one of those locations was in Mexico where the Tikal temple is actually located, and even on top of that, the exact temple is used in the hub world as a reference for the Echidna Civilization's temple. Wow, you guys really took your notes, damn. Hey, get a star for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, apart from both Lanny Manila and someone else who was uncredited as the train conductors in the train station.
The train headed for the Mystic Ruins will be departing soon.
The train headed for Station Square will be departing soon.
Yeah, that's it. Overall, the voice acting is great. The only thing taking it down in quality slightly is the poor voice direction. I mean, Crash Bandicoot 3 and Spyro 2 had better voice acting at the time. What's this game's excuse? I'm just glad we have more than great voices to make up for it. And by the next game they get the hang of it. Solid effort from all the VAs. Now there comes a time in every game's life where it must choose what it wants to look like. And apparently it wanted to be a pretty nice damn looking game, because ooh, this game's attractive. The game looks pretty good considering it's a remake of a Dreamcast title, but for some reason it looks much more different than the original, and for no reason either. I mean, Director's Cut might have better models and better textures, but the lighting engine is a bit blurry and kinda shines in the models, much like that in Sonic Heroes as well, albeit not as bad. The latter being something that plagued the series until Unleashed actually. No, seriously, the worst it got was Shadow the Hedgehog, but we don't use that kind of language in this house. Regardless, the remake still looks pretty good. Especially since the lip syncing was a lot better in Sonic Adventure 2 and Heroes. Either way, the graphics and frame rate of the DX port is actually really good to say the least. It's not the greatest looking thing on the GameCube, but because of it being a Dreamcast game conceptually, it does bump it up to run at 60 FPS, and some textures, although some others also not looking as good, look good. But in terms of what it is, yeah, it's no supermodel, but it'll do. Wait, what? Also, one thing I want to skim over is this game's beautiful art direction. The art team did an amazing job, and it's been led by Yuji Uekawa. And heck, one thing that you guys might not know is that I actually based a little bit of my art style off of this style. Yeah, the tube long arms for Len is actually based around similar to that of Sonic's. And there's also something else quite interesting to note as well. Nicely done, Sonic Team. You made a nice looking game, and the art style I absolutely adore. And so we've reached the end game. You know what I'm talking about. Sonic and Co have stopped Chaos, the Master Emerald is restored back in one piece along with the 7 Chaos Emeralds again, Angel Island has risen back into the sky, Big and Froggy can go fishing for all eternity for all I care, Amy went back to her apartment and watched some TV, Gamma is somewhere in the world living his free life as a flicky, and Sonic and Tails can go fix up their plane and hang out like the brothers from other mothers that they are. Except, nah, whilst Dr. Eggman was walling away that his plan failed from both Sonic and Tails, out of nowhere Chaos appears before him and strikes him? I don't know, it's not really shown, it's more of a fade if anything. And Chaos takes him to Angel Island where he then takes on Knuckles. Meanwhile, Sonic is just relaxing. Next to the train station, the Mystic Ruins, might I add. Okay. And then Tails comes out running to tell him that Angel Island has been dragged down again. Sonic and Tails race over to see Dr. Eggman and Knuckles lying knocked out by Chaos. With Knuckles telling us that dun dun dun, the puddle of Buxton is still alive. Well, I mean it's water, just get a hairdryer or some shit, or leave out to dry in the sun. Think of something here, guys. Dr. Eggman then immediately gets up and races off in the distance. Sonic is then flashed away by Tikal to the final flashback where we're shown the attack on the Master Emerald Temple.
This place, it looks familiar. It's not a dream after all.
Get out of my way!
No way!
Did you hear what I said?
I won't obey!
We need those 7 emeralds to give us total power.
It's power for the people. And they are your people too, you know. We must get that emerald.
Greed is our enemy. Once it starts, you will always want more. Please don't do this. I beg you.
Bah! I don't listen to the words of a child. Ready, men? Charge!
Father!
It's a monster! No!
And for its time, it's kinda barbaric. Plus the lighting used to freak me the fuck out as a kid. Sonic runs over to Tikal to see if she's alright, which she then gets up to run to the Master Emerald to stop chaos.
Hey, are you alright?
I think so. Oh my gosh! No!
Wait up!
The 7 emeralds are the servers. Chaos is power enriched by the heart. The controller serves to unify the chaos. The 7 emeralds can change our thoughts into power. If this emerald controls that power, please, you must stop him.
Sonic then wakes up thinking it was just a dream, and he sees Tails with this lovely expression on his face. Nice. And just as they find the Tornado 2 lying around at Big's house, disaster strikes.
What? No! He's got the last emerald!
Now what do we do?
Chaos smacks down and pulls it right out of the Tornado, now completing his final form and fully completing himself to be perfect Chaos, the god of destruction. So now in Station Square, the city is being torn apart by Chaos's wrath while the people of the city run for their lives. And as Sonic sourly looks up at what he failed to stop, Dr. Eggman unleashes his Egg Carrier 2. He's overthrown by his own weapon that he's been bragging to have in his possession from the very start of the game. Anyway, with Eggman laughably blasting off again in the style of Team Rocket, Tikal appears in front of Sonic and tells him that Chaos is lost cause, and trying to reason with it is futile, basically going against our initial intentions of peace that we saw in the flashbacks. And instead it's actually Sonic who objects to sealing him back into the Master Emerald, since this will happen again. Yet again, another shining moment for Sonic's character. It's moments like this that really show him who he is as a hero, and it made him all that much better for me to connect with him as a kid. So absorbing the positive energy from the emeralds, Sonic transforms into his super form and shows the walking PP who's the real loser. The final battle is really great. It has Crush 40's Open Your Heart blasting over the top of the fight as Sonic skims across the water to ram right into perfect chaos. Well, sadly only for the first phase. For some reason, that is. Whereas not being my favourite Sonic boss of all time, it's definitely the best boss in the game next to Zero, Chaos 6, E101 Beta Mark II, and the Egg Viper for sure. It's also based around the momentum-based mechanics Sonic is known for. Basically, you need to collect enough rings to keep Supersonic's state in check, but also need to continuously keep on moving to build up on his boost that keeps you going at fast enough speeds to penetrate Chaos's body and make your chance at attacking him. So after that epic showdown, Sonic gets that bread and stops Perfect Chaos from his reign of terror. Reign? God, you guys are hard to please. Apparently after Supersonic defeated him, he's now been neutralized and is now nice again with no negative feelings left. And with all this said and done, Tikal and Chaos fly into the sky where they can rest in peace. And Sonic runs off after Eggman after he spots him in the corner of his eye. End of story. And that, my garden chair army, was Sonic Adventure. Now you may have picked up that I really like this game and I'm willing to defend it. Now don't get me wrong, this game surely has its flaws, that's a given. And this game's greatest problem is that it's just aged terribly. Sonic Adventure is a very mixed game. There's bound to be at least one thing you don't like in it. But it still remembers what it is, and that's being the very first time to ever stick the landing after 3 attempts to 3D in the past. And this was a new beginning for the series. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but some people are really growing tired of the boost formula at this point. And look at Mania. That game is praised by many because it embraced what Sonic is in 2D formation and went back to its roots. What about the fans of 3D Sonic that have wanted a Sonic Adventure 3 for ages? It doesn't even have to be an Adventure 3, just bring this gameplay back. Anyway, I personally still enjoy Sonic Adventure. And if you're one of those people who can blindly hate in this game just because it's a Sonic game that's aged poorly or whatever paper out of the hat reason that you can come up with without playing the game for yourself first, please, just give it a try yourself. It's available on the PlayStation Store, Xbox Live Arcade, and even Steam if you don't have a Wii or GameCube to play it on. So, that's all I'll say about that. And with that said, folks, come back next time when I look at not only my favourite Sonic game, but also my second favourite game of all time. Sonic Adventure 2. Huh? Oh, I thought I heard something. Oh, you heard something, Lane.